in a few minutes, the guy who has made history by printing a gun. But first, I want to kind of go to Benghazi a little bit. I want to talk to you about Muslim Brotherhood and the Saudis and so much more. Washington, we know, is in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood and the Saudis, but we, I believe, are aiding and abetting them here in America and around the world. But the stories around home are the ones that this network needs to pay attention to because no one else will. Far from being dead, Al-Qaeda and radical Islamic terrorism is on the rise. The Terrorist Identities Data Mart environment that's called TIDE, it's our main terrorism database, has grown in the past 5 years from 540,000 entries to 875,000 people that we say are terrorists. That's a 62% jump in 5 years. The administration wants you to believe it's all under control. But it's the stories that everybody else won't print that we feel you need to see that paint a much different picture. Earlier this month, 2 Filipino women were rescued from a Virginia house owned by the Armed Forces Office of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Their passports had allegedly been confiscated, and they had been forced to work long hours without any pay. Authorities were alerted when one of the women tried to escape by squeezing through a closing gate. Human trafficking is nothing new to the Saudis. According to a 2008 State Department report, Saudi Arabia is, quote, a destination country for men and women trafficked for the purposes of involuntary servitude and, to a lesser extent, commercial sexual exploitation. But it's not just exploitation or slavery, and it's not just the Saudis. Last week, we told you about a group of 7 chemical engineers from Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Singapore who were arrested at a Massachusetts reservoir. Now, this reservoir happens to be the main water supply for that area in Massachusetts. Apparently, police now say there's nothing to worry about here. They've been cleared of any wrongdoing, beyond trespassing after dark at a reservoir. That one caught my eye, and I said to the Blaze, we should look into what you mean by after dark, because it seems a little misleading, especially when you look at the facts. After dark is certainly different than after midnight, isn't it? This was in the middle of the night, after midnight, 5 men and 2 women that maintained dresses in different parts of Massachusetts and New York City, all over. They all get together to scout out a reservoir at about 1 a.m. in the morning. Now, they said, because of their training, they were merely curious. About what? And if you're really curious, think of how much you can learn if you took your tour during the day. Call them. According to a Massachusetts State Police spokesperson, quote, following a thorough investigation, the Massachusetts State Police and the FBI have determined that the subjects have no connection to any criminal activity or groups. Tell you about another guy, Ahmed Abbasi. Have you heard of this? He's a Tunisian man. He was arrested in New York for, among other things, making plans to contaminate a water supply with bacteria. Now, this is the guy who radicalized the guys in Canada who were just arrested last month for planning to derail a train. The FBI had eyes on him since he arrived in March, and according to the undercover agent, he met with several times. He liked the train idea, but he said it wasn't enough. He needed something with more potential casualties. That's why he was going to poison the air or water supply in order to kill up to 100,000 people. But you haven't heard that one in the news, have you? Why? Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, this weekend, 2 separate grand juries, one in Utah and one in Idaho, indicted a Uzbekistan Muslim, dare I say it, on federal terrorism charges. He's accused of conspiring to provide support and resources to the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, a designated terrorist organization. He's also charged with distributing information on explosives, bombs, and weapons of mass destruction. He's been busy posting do-it-yourself videos on the internet, and none of his neighbors had any idea who he was. And just last Thursday, the president said he had a good friend, Turkish Prime Minister, over for a visit. And, well, the Turkish Prime Minister wanted to have him meet a few people. Well, the president's a little busy. The official delegation included a guy named Ahmed Dogan. He is a father. Well, was a father. He was the father of one of the 9 Muslim extremists that were killed in the Gaza flotilla incident in 2010. He wrote a letter for the Prime Minister in Turkey, and he said, "Could you please give it to the President when you go and visit him in Washington?" But instead, the Prime Minister asked this father of this suicidal maniac to join the official delegation in hopes he could deliver it to President Obama personally. Back in March, the president somehow convinced the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to apologize for the flotilla killings, despite the fact that they were attempting to bypass an enforced naval blockade, and 7 of the 9 were on record expressing a desire to be martyred. Still, organizers of the flotilla claimed that it was a humanitarian effort. In return for Israel's apology, Turkey was supposed to drop any suits against Israel. And yet, just last week, lawyers for the families in Turkey, some of them with close ties to the Prime Minister of Turkey, filed suit in the Hague International Criminal Court. It is reported that Dogan's letter urges the President of the United States to have America join the suit. Still, President Obama praised his friend, quote, "Given our shared interest in peace, I want to note the Prime Minister's efforts to normalize relations with Israel. Ahmet Dogan, in the end, didn't meet the president and couldn't give his letter about his son. The president, like I said, was a little too busy, so his audience was limited to this guy, the Secretary of State. The Turkish foreign minister tweeted out this photo of himself, Dogan in the middle, and John Kerry. According to his following tweets, John Kerry agreed to deliver the letter to President Obama personally. I thought you should know. John Kerry had urged the Prime Minister to hold off on the visit to the Gaza Strip. Last Thursday, Erdogan stood in front of the White House and talked about visiting the leaders of Hamas in June. We are in bed with all of the wrong guys. You can't get into bed with them. You can't play ball with them. But that's what we're doing. The fact is, they are operating under a whole different rule book. And unfortunately, if the rest of the media doesn't pay attention, it will be you, your family, and mine, and the Western way of life that will pay the ultimate price for this.